Munck taught us to apply the pi ratio to the numbers shown by the ancient architect. When we saw the four terraces and gave them the value of 4 pi, we were immediately equipped to decode its position in the matrix. Now let's take this primitive logic back to Stonehenge and apply it to what we see over there. British archaeologist A.T.C. Atkinson found the diameter of the Phase 1 outer circle at Stonehenge to be 288 feet. Following Munck's directions, that becomes 288 pi. The outer circle of Phase 3 Stonehenge, with its 60 stones all arranged in a complete 360-degree circle, provided us with the 21,600 grid latitude of Stonehenge. Does it not follow then that its inner horseshoe-shaped arrangement should guide us toward its grid longitude? Sure, but we must be careful here. This inner arrangement is not rational. Don't misunderstand. The 15 is a rational number, but the way they have this horseshoe arranged is irrational. It is broken into separate displays, whereas the outer stone circle of 60 stones was unbroken, a complete circle. Why did they show us these 15 inner stones irrationally? Are we supposed to somehow see 15 as an irrational number? And if so, how are we to do this? Let's go back to square one for a moment. What does Stonehenge show? It shows 60 stones on its perimeter, a rational number and rational presentation, a complete circle. Its inner horseshoe shows us 15 stones, a rational number, but at the same time an irrational presentation. Then we have the rational number 2, an inner display and an outer display, 2. 3 rational numbers, 2, 15, and 60, but they don't fit, do they? 15 times 2 is not 60, yet the 15 stones of the horseshoe are inside the unbroken outer stone display. These numbers must somehow go together. How are we to make them speak logically? There's only one way. By reducing both its 15 and its 60 to their own square roots. Only in so doing can we build a functional link between all 3 numbers. Is this why the builders broke the 15 inner stones into an irrational display, to show us that we must see it as a square root? Curiosity. We must exercise curiosity. So let's take our 288 pi off Phase 1, 15, and the square root of 15 and see what they say. Notice, please, that I am not simply pulling these numbers out of thin air as so many numerologists like to do. I am following their directions. These numbers are either shown at the site or strongly suggested. Now, what is 52,562.89164? It's the figure which encodes the actual West Giza longitude of Stonehenge, 32 degrees, 57 minutes, 28.817 seconds. Which certainly seems to confirm that the square root of 15 is a valid, anciently intended, though hidden, constant in the math of Stonehenge. Then, too, this grid longitude for Stonehenge locks itself in on other mathematical constants. For example, this equation uses the 288-foot diameter of Phase 1 Stonehenge. We do know that the circumference of Stonehenge 3 is about 305 3/4 feet, but about is not adequate here. The only thing we can be sure of at this time is that it has a circumference of 360 degrees. After all, that's what Juliaco taught us about circles. So 360 becomes 360 pi. Divide our suspect grid longitude of Stonehenge by 360 pi and we find the square root of another mathematical constant, 2160, the number of angular degrees in the geometric cube. The square root of 2160 then is a lost constant now retrieved. We can park it in the back of our minds and refer to it as required. Next, giving the 360 degree circle of Stonehenge the value of 360 pi finds its grid longitude. Should the same logic not apply to its grid latitude? Sure, it has to. As we already know, the 60 stones and the 360 degree perimeter of Phase 3 Stonehenge furnished us its grid latitude. Now we shall take that 360 degree circle, redesignate it 360 pi, and give it back to 21,600. Remember it? It's 1/3 of the 360 degree radian. The ratio between the volume and surface area of the 360 degree sphere, as explained by the Juliaco pyramid back in the previous segment. Solid stuff. 360 pi from the grid latitude of Stonehenge shows us 1/3 of the radian. 360 pi from its grid longitude shows us the square root of 2160. Let's combine these results, just to see if any other lost constants turn up. Another one. And we are not completely unfamiliar with it, though this is the first time we have seen it in this mode. Another square root. The square root of the volume of the 360 degree sphere. They sure used a lot of constants we're not familiar with, didn't they? The radian, 1/2 and 1/3 of it. The square roots of 15, 60, 2160, and the volume of the 360 degree sphere. Is that all of them? I wish it was, but there are more. It was well over a century ago now that Englishman John Taylor advanced his theory that Egypt's Great Pyramid was a model of the mathematical constant double pi, 6.28318, in that when its base perimeter was multiplied by double pi, the answer in British feet came in fairly close to the pyramid's actual height. Unfortunately, several centuries before, the Arabs tore all the facing stones off the Great Pyramid, thereby erasing its original measurements. Without them, he could not prove his theory. Well, Mr. Taylor was right on the money, as I will demonstrate somewhat later on, and it makes perfect sense. These people worked with the 360 degree radian, and to get it, 360 has to be divided by double pi, not pi. Double pi, then, was another of the curious constants in the matrix. So let's see how it reacts to some of the others, like maybe the square root of 2160. It's another of their strange constants, and important too. They even marked this one out for us over at Giza. It's the actual east longitude of tiny pyramids number 4, 5, and 6 at the base of the Great Pyramid. 00 degrees, 00 minutes, 07.3968 seconds. I call these pyramids tiny only because they set by a true giant. Before they were ruined, they stood as high as the tallest pyramids in the Western Hemisphere. Giza's pyramids take the honors where height is concerned, but that's all. Several Western pyramids are considerably larger in their base proportions, and many of our effigy earthworks could cover the Giza site in its entirety, places like Panther Mound and Poverty Point. In addition, this new constant of 7.3968 is a squared number. Its square root will be quickly recognized by British antiquarians as a direct hit, with a 2.719-foot megalithic yard as refined by Alexander Thom, though it is better known as 2.72 feet.